The space station hung like a silver ring in the dark sky. It floated between two stars, glowing softly as if it was alive. Ships from many worlds moved around it like quiet fish in a deep ocean. For most people in the galaxy, this station was only a story. But for Captain Aria Vale, it was real. And today, she was walking straight into it. Aria stood in the docking bay as the shuttle door opened. The air was cold and clear, and the lights were soft blue. Everything around her looked smooth, polished, and calm, very different from the metal walls of human ships. She adjusted her uniform, checked the small badge on her chest, and took a deep breath. This was not a military mission. It was something more dangerous, a first meeting. No human had ever been invited to this place before. For years, this alien alliance had kept their distance from Earth. They traded with other worlds. They signed treaties with other species. But they never spoke directly to humans. Until now, Aria walked slowly down the ramp. A group of tall, thin figures waited for her. Their skin was pale like the inside of seashells, and their eyes were large and dark like deep pools. Their clothes were made of shining fabric that moved like water when they walked. They did not smile, at least not in a human way, but their heads tilted politely as she approached. At the center of the group stood a young alien officer. She was smaller than the others, with silver markings along her arms and a faint glow around her shoulders. She looked nervous but curious too. Her eyes were fixed on Aria's face. As Aria came closer, the young alien did something unexpected. She bit her lip, a very human gesture. Then in a soft and shaky voice she said, "You must be human soldier, aren't you?" Aria paused. She hadn't expected to hear a voice like that. It was not full of fear or anger. It sounded like someone who had read a lot of stories and was finally meeting the hero. Or maybe the monster. Aria gave a small nod, keeping her expression calm. "I'm Captain Aria Vale," she said clearly. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to talk." The young alien tilted her head again as if she was trying to understand each word carefully. She stepped aside and made a small hand sign, signaling Aria to follow. They walked through a long corridor. The floor was made of smooth glass that lit up under their feet. Strange symbols moved along the walls like gentle waves. Aria felt like she was inside a living machine. She had trained for months for this moment. She had read reports, practiced alien languages, and memorized every rule. But none of that could prepare her for the feeling of being watched by an entire station. The young alien officer walked a few steps ahead of her. Aria noticed how other aliens looked at her as they passed. Some stared openly. Some whispered to each other. A few moved out of the way quickly as if she carried something dangerous. Aria kept her back straight and her eyes forward. She had learned a long time ago that sometimes silence was louder than words. "First time on Concordia," the young alien suddenly said without turning back. Aria blinked. "Concordia?" she repeated. The young alien slowed her steps a little as if trying to match Aria's pace. "That is the name of this station. It means place of quiet in our language. We built it so no one has to fight here." Aria gave a small nod. "It's beautiful." The alien officer's shoulders relaxed slightly. "You are not like the stories." Aria raised an eyebrow. "What kind of stories?" The alien stopped at the next door and turned toward her. For a moment the hall felt quiet, almost too quiet. Her dark eyes reflected the soft light of the walls. "Stories that say humans are wild. That you cannot stop moving forward. That you always want more." Aria almost smiled. She had heard that kind of thing before. From other species, from other meetings. Humans had a reputation. A dangerous one. But it was not because they were cruel. It was because they never gave up. "Well," Aria said slowly, "maybe some of the stories are true." The alien didn't move. She just watched her for a long moment, as if she was trying to see what kind of truth Aria carried inside her. They entered a wide room with a transparent ceiling. Above them, stars stretched across the blackness like a frozen river. In the center of the room, a silver table hovered slightly above the floor. Around it sat alien diplomats with calm faces and folded hands. A tall figure in deep blue robes stood at the head of the table. His voice was smooth and quiet when he spoke. "Welcome, Captain Aria Vale of Earth," he said. "You are the first of your kind to set foot here." Aria bowed her head politely. "Thank you for receiving me." The tall figure's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in calculation. "Our alliance has watched your world for many years. You are different." "Yes," Aria said softly. "We are. Different can be dangerous. Different can also be useful," Aria replied. A few diplomats exchanged quiet glances. It was clear that not everyone agreed about having a human on their station. But Arya didn't shrink away from their looks. She had been chosen for this mission not because she was the strongest, but because she knew how to stand her ground with grace. After the formal greetings, Arya was guided to a smaller chamber. The young alien officer followed her closely. When the doors closed behind them, the alien finally spoke again. "My name is Tisira," she said, almost shyly. "Nice to meet you." "Tisira?" Arya replied. Tisira hesitated, then asked, "Is it true that humans came from a single small planet?" Arya nodded. "Yes, and you crossed the stars. With fragile ships?" Arya smiled a little. "We like to travel. We like to learn. Sometimes we build big things from small dreams." Tisira's eyes shone faintly. "That sounds impossible." "It did," Arya said, looking up at the ceiling where the stars were still visible. "Until we did it." Tisira looked at her for a long time. It was not a stare of fear anymore. It was something else, something like respect or wonder. As they walked again through the glowing corridors, Arya noticed more alien signs. Small things. How they moved aside but didn't run. How some whispered softly, not in fear but in surprise. She could feel their eyes on her back. And she realized something. This moment was bigger than her. She wasn't just a soldier. She was the first human they had ever met up close. Tisira walked beside her now, not ahead. She seemed less nervous. "Why did you come here?" she asked suddenly. Arya didn't answer right away. She thought about the planet she left behind, the blue oceans, the green lands, the noisy cities. She thought about the people who argued and laughed and built rockets out of scrap metal. She thought about the way humans always looked up at the night sky, wondering what was out there. "I came," Arya said slowly, "because we don't want to be alone anymore." Tisira's steps slowed. "Alone?" Arya looked at her. "We've always looked at the stars. We knew someone was out here, and now that we found you, we want to learn, to understand, to be part of something bigger." The young alien bit her lip again, the same way she did when they first met. "And if they say no?" Arya gave a small smile. "Then we'll try again." Tisira frowned. "Why?" "Because that's what humans do." They reached a large window overlooking the station's outer rings. From here, Arya could see hundreds of lights moving in the distance, ships coming and going, each carrying a story. She pressed her hand lightly against the cool glass. She didn't know if this mission would succeed. She didn't know if they would accept Earth. But she did know one thing: they would remember her. And sometimes being remembered is the first step to changing everything. Tisira stood quietly beside her. "You are very strange," she said softly. Arya laughed under her breath. "I've heard that before, but also brave." Arya didn't answer. She just watched the stars. For centuries, humans had dreamed of this moment. And now, here she was, one small person standing on the edge of a galaxy that had finally turned its head to look back. And somewhere deep inside that star station, whispers were already spreading. The lights in the station changed slowly as day shifted to night. On Concordia, there was no real sun, but the aliens had created light cycles to make time feel natural. Captain Arya Vale walked through the quiet hallway with Tisira by her side. The glass floor glowed softly under their steps, and distant stars shone through the wide windows. For the first time since arriving, Arya felt the weight of everything around her. This station was more than a place. It was a test. Everyone here was watching, not with loud words, but with quiet eyes and careful gestures. Tisira held a small device in her hand. She kept glancing at it nervously. "Something wrong?" Arya asked gently. Tisira shook her head, then nodded, unsure what to say. "There are many messages tonight. Private messages about me." She hesitated. Yes, Arya wasn't surprised. Humans had always been a mystery to most of the galaxy. Some saw them as explorers, some as troublemakers, some as dreamers who didn't know their place. But this was the first time one of them was standing inside the heart of the Alliance. They entered a quiet room filled with long silver curtains and soft blue lights. It was not a meeting room this time. It was a garden. The floor was covered in strange plants that moved slowly like they were breathing. A small stream of water ran through the middle, reflecting the glowing ceiling. Tisira led Arya to a bench made of something that looked like smooth stone but felt warm to the touch. She sat down, finally letting out a breath she seemed to be holding for hours. "You know," Tisira said softly, "some of us grew up hearing stories about humans. The way you crossed the cold space, the way you built cities where nothing should survive. They said you would come here one day." Arya tilted her head. "And what did they say would happen when we came?" Tisira looked down at her hands. "They said the stars would change." As they sat in the garden, Arya noticed faint sounds from hidden speakers. It was soft music, calm, flowing like water. But beneath the calm, she could feel the tension. Something was happening behind the polite smiles and perfect lights. Arya had spent years as a diplomat, but before that, she had been a soldier. Not the kind who fought battles, but the kind who stood at the line and watched the storms come. She knew this feeling. It was the feeling of something important about to break. Tisira finally looked up. "Captain Arya, do humans always keep moving forward?" Arya smiled faintly. "Most of the time, yes. Even when we don't know what's waiting for us. Even when others tell you to stop. Especially then." Tisira bit her lip again, that same nervous human-like gesture. "That's why they are afraid of you." Later that evening, a small group of alien officials arrived at the garden. Their robes shimmered in soft colors, and their faces were calm but serious. One of them, an elder with glowing silver lines on his temples, spoke first. "Captain Vale, we thank you for respecting our traditions," he said, "but we must be honest. There are members of the Assembly who believe humanity is too unpredictable to join the Alliance." Arya stood slowly. "Unpredictable isn't the same as dangerous," she said. The elder's eyes narrowed just a little. "History does not always agree." Tisira stiffened beside her as if she wanted to speak but didn't dare. Arya placed a light hand on the edge of the bench. Her voice stayed calm. "History also says no one crossed the stars from a small world like ours," Arya said. "But here I am." The officials exchanged glances. They didn't like the way humans broke expectations. That was exactly why they were nervous. "We value peace above all," the elder continued. "And peace requires control." Arya didn't look away. "Humans don't like control. We like choice," the elder sighed quietly. "And that is why some believe your kind will bring storms." He and the other officials left without raising their voices. Everything on Concordia was quiet. But quiet didn't mean safe. When the door closed, Tisira spoke in a whisper. "They are going to vote tomorrow. Some want to block your entry forever. Some are afraid of what will happen if they say yes." Arya looked at the stars beyond the glass. Her reflection in the window seemed smaller than the endless black. But there was a light in her eyes that no darkness could cover. "We've been underestimated before," she said softly. "It's nothing new." That night, Arya walked alone through the observation deck. The whole station felt like it was holding its breath. Every guard, every scientist, every diplomat she passed watched her with quiet curiosity. She thought of Earth, of the long nights in training camps, of sitting under a small sky full of stars and dreaming of what lay beyond. Humanity had never had the biggest ships or the strongest weapons, but they had hearts that refused to give up. She remembered something her commander once told her. "When they don't trust your power, show them your spirit." Tisira found her again near the docking bay. "I should not be here," she whispered, looking around nervously. "But I need to tell you something. Some people want the vote to fail. They want the station to close its gates to Earth forever." Arya turned to her. "Why are you telling me this?" Tisira's eyes shimmered softly. "Because I don't think the stories are true. At least not in the way they say. I saw the way you spoke today. You didn't shout. You didn't threaten. You just stood there." "That's all we can do," Arya said gently. "Stand and keep standing." Tisira's hands trembled. "If they say no tomorrow, it will not just be no. It will be a wall that will stay up for a long time." Arya nodded slowly. She understood. One vote could decide if humanity joined the galactic community or stayed alone again. Back in her guest quarters, Arya sat at a small table and stared at the glowing stars outside. She thought about how far humanity had come, from wooden ships crossing oceans to fragile rockets flying through black space. From old fears to new dreams, she remembered the faces of the first explorers, the scientists, the families who watched launches from old cities. They didn't have guarantees. They only had courage. She whispered to herself, "We didn't come this far to turn back now." The next morning, the station buzzed with quiet movement. Aliens filled the great chamber of the assembly. Transparent walls showed the endless space outside. Every voice in that room could shape the future. Arya stood at the entrance. She didn't wear armor. She didn't carry weapons. All she carried was the weight of human history behind her. Tessira joined her silently. Her face looked tense but determined. "They'll ask you questions," Tessira said. "They'll try to make you prove something impossible." Arya smiled lightly. "Then I'll do what humans always do," Tessira frowned.
"What's that?"
"Make the impossible look simple." Before the session began, one of the officials from last night approached Arya. He leaned in close and said in a low voice, "You should know, Captain. Most here already made up their minds. Humans bring change, and this place doesn't like change." Arya met his gaze. "That's the thing about change," she said softly. "It happens anyway." The official stared at her for a second, then walked away. Tessira let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "You're not scared?" she asked. "I'm human," Arya answered. "We get scared. We just keep walking anyway." The great chamber filled with sound as the assembly prepared for the vote. But Arya didn't focus on the crowd. She focused on the stars beyond the glass. Every star was a story waiting to be written. And she wanted humans to be part of those stories. Not as legends, not as threats, but as equals. Tessira touched her arm gently. "Whatever happens, they'll remember today." Arya looked at her and gave a small nod. "Then let's give them something worth remembering." The doors to the assembly opened wide. A soft bell rang through the station. This was it, the moment when everything would change or stay the same. Arya straightened her back and stepped forward into the light, ready to face the unknown once again. The great chamber of the assembly was brighter than usual. Tall windows opened to a sea of stars, letting the soft glow of distant suns fill the air. Silver pillars rose like trees, and thousands of quiet lights moved gently above as if the ceiling was breathing. Every seat in the circle was full. Leaders of many alien worlds sat together, their faces calm but their eyes sharp. A low hum ran through the crowd. Not noise, but a soft wave of whispers like wind in a forest. At the center of the chamber stood Captain Arya Vale, the first human ever to step on Concordia. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, but she didn't move. She stood tall, hands steady at her sides. Behind her, Tessira stood near the entrance. Her heart was beating fast. She had never spoken against the assembly, but she had never wanted something so much before. She wanted them to see Arya the way she did, not as a story, but as a person. The elder official raised his hand. The whispers faded at once. "Captain Vale," he said slowly, "this assembly will vote today, but before that you may speak. Know this. Many fear that humans will change the balance of this alliance, that your kind will push too hard, move too fast, and break what has been built over centuries." Arya nodded. She had expected nothing less. He continued, "You have one chance to speak. Choose your words carefully. This is not only your future, it may become ours." The room grew quiet, so quiet that Arya could hear her own breath. She stepped forward into the center of the light. She didn't start with grand words. She started simply. "I was born on a small planet," she said. "We call it Earth. It has blue oceans, green lands, and skies full of stars. When I was a child, I used to lie on the roof of my house and look up at the night sky. I didn't know who lived out there, but I knew we weren't alone." A few aliens leaned closer, curious. Arya's voice was calm, steady, and soft, but it carried across the room. "We didn't have the biggest ships," she continued. "We didn't have endless time or endless power, but we had something else. We had hope, and with that hope, we built what we needed. We crossed the dark not because it was easy, but because we couldn't stop looking at the stars." Tessira felt her chest tighten. The way Arya spoke was different from the formal language of diplomats. It was warm. It was human. The elder official interrupted gently. "But hope can also be dangerous, Captain. What happens when your hope makes others afraid?" Arya looked straight at him. "Then we keep hoping anyway, because if we let fear win, we lose everything." A few quiet gasps came from the crowd. Arya didn't stop. "You've heard stories about us. You think humans are wild, that we move too fast, that we don't know when to stop. Maybe that's true, but let me tell you something. When the cold is too deep, when the dark is too long, we light a fire, even a small one, and we keep it burning until morning comes." She walked slowly in a circle so that everyone could see her face. "We're not here to conquer. We're here because we want to stand beside you. We want to learn, to share, and to build something together. We don't ask to be trusted right away. We just ask for a chance." The youngest member of the assembly, a bright-eyed diplomat with glowing hair, whispered to the elder beside her. The elder frowned but did not silence her. Arya noticed. She continued, "I know you fear change. But change is not a storm that destroys. It can be a wind that moves sails forward. It can be the first step into something new." Up in the higher seats, some delegates shook their heads, but others listened closely. Tessira could see their faces soften little by little. She whispered to herself, "They're hearing her." The elder asked again, "And what will happen when humanity makes mistakes, Captain?" "Because all species do," Arya nodded. "Then we will learn. We've made many mistakes before. We will make more. But we don't run from them. We get up again and again. That's what we are." The silence after her words was different now. It was no longer cold. It was heavy, thoughtful. Tessira felt something rising inside her, a feeling she had never had in these halls. Courage. She took a small step forward. Before she could stop herself, she raised her voice. "I am Tessira," she said, surprising the entire room. Her voice echoed softly. "I was the first to meet Captain Vale when she arrived. I was afraid. But she didn't act like a threat. She listened. She spoke to me as if I mattered. Not as an enemy. As a person." Dozens of eyes turned to her. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. "Maybe the stories are wrong," she said. "Maybe humans aren't storms. Maybe they are the first light before the storm passes." The elder lifted an eyebrow. "Tessira, you are not part of this discussion." "But I was part of the first moment," she replied firmly. "And sometimes the first moment shows the truth." A murmur spread across the chamber. Some were shocked at her boldness, but others nodded. Arya met her eyes and gave a small, grateful smile. Then came the voting time. One by one, the alien delegates pressed glowing stones in front of them, white for yes, black for no, blue for uncertain. The chamber filled with soft clicks and quiet breaths. Arya stood still, hands behind her back. She had done everything she could. The rest was not in her control now. Cyrus stood near the entrance, holding her breath so tightly it almost hurt. As the last vote was cast, the elder placed his hands on the silver console. A large circle in the center of the floor began to glow. Slowly, the results formed above it in the air, light spinning like stars. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the symbols became clear. White, 61%, black, 29%, blue, 10%. A quiet sound spread through the room. Not a shout, not a cheer, just a soft, surprised wave. Cyrus' hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes shone. She whispered, "They said yes." The elder stood again, his voice steady. "The assembly has decided. Humanity will be welcomed as a new member of the Concordia Alliance. The vote is done." Arya exhaled slowly. She didn't smile wide, but the corners of her mouth softened. For a moment, the weight of centuries lifted from her shoulders. After the session, the corridor outside the chamber filled with light. Many delegates passed by Arya. Some nodded politely. A few even stopped to offer quiet greetings. None of them saw her as a storm anymore. Tessira ran to her, her silver markings glowing softly. "You did it," she breathed. "No," Arya said gently. "We did," Tessira blinked. "Me?" You spoke up. "That matters. Sometimes change starts with one voice." They walked together toward the observation deck. Outside, the stars shone brighter than before. Or maybe it only felt that way. Ships moved slowly past the station like distant fireflies. Tessira bit her lip again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was joy she didn't know how to hold inside. "Everyone will talk about this night," she whispered. Arya nodded. "Good, let them talk. What will humans do now?" "Everything," Arya said softly. "We'll learn. We'll build. We'll make friends. We'll make mistakes. But most of all, we'll keep going." The soft voice of the station's system echoed through the halls, announcing the beginning of the integration ceremony for Earth. In the center of the station, the flags of many worlds hung side by side. A new one was about to be added, a simple blue and green symbol with a small star in the middle. Arya placed her hand on the glass window. "We've always looked up at the stars," she said. But tonight, the stars looked back. Tessira stood beside her, smiling. "You really are a human soldier," she said softly. Arya chuckled. "Not the kind they expected?" "No," Tessira said. "Better." As the ceremony began, the station filled with gentle music. Lights rippled across the floor like soft waves. A human voice joined the chorus, a simple song from Earth about hope and journey. The sound echoed through the halls, mixing with alien harmonies until no one could tell where one began and the other ended. Syra closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound fill her chest. For the first time, Concordia didn't feel cold. It felt alive. Arya stood at the center of the crowd, surrounded by faces from across the galaxy. Some smiled, some watched quietly, but all were there. The world had changed, not through war or force, but through a conversation, a voice, and a shared hope. She didn't need to give another speech. She just raised her head high, as a representative of a species that had finally stepped into the galaxy, and the galaxy had answered, "Welcome."